Okay, let's start from the beginning.
First, God made
The world.
ta-da!
All by himself. The whole thing.
And he was really happy with it because it was perfect.
The weather was perfect.
The plants were perfect. The food was perfect. Mwah!
The whole world was perfect.
And two people got to live in this perfect place. They were Adam and Eve.
Now God was happy with everything he made,
But he was especially excited about them.
he loved them so much.
Life was good.
Except for one thing. God had an enemy, and God's enemy wanted to destroy this perfect place.
By convincing Adam and Eve that God didn't really love them.
God's enemy comes back into the story a little later.
There's only one rule in this paradise. Eat anything except one thing. God said,
Don't eat the fruit from the tree in the middle of the garden.
some people think it was an apple.
Or a banana.
But we don't really know for sure.
Could have been a pawpaw.
It's a thing. Look it up.
Yep, here it is, indigenous to southeastern Ohio.
Whatever it was, God didn't want Adam and Eve to eat it. It was a rule.
And Adam and Eve could either obey God
Or not.
They had a choice.
They weren't robots. God wants us to trust and love him freely, but only if we want to. Do you want to?
So anyway, back to God's enemy,
Satan.
the devil. He's tricky. And in the garden, he showed up as a serpent.
That's another word for snake.
Yeah, he convinced Eve to eat the fruit.
The one thing they weren't supposed to eat.
And the snake convinced Eve God didn't love her as much as she thought he did.
Which was not true. Not even close to true.
And after Eve ate the fruit, Adam did too. To be honest, I would have done the same thing.
Me too.
So, as soon as Adam and Eve ate the fruit, they felt different.
They felt ashamed.
They knew they didn't have clothes on.
Even though they had still loved God, they knew they had let him down. They had disobeyed him. And they were scared to find out what God would do.
So they hid from him.
But God found them. They told God they had eaten the fruit they weren't supposed to eat.
So God couldn't let Adam and Eve live in his perfect garden anymore. They were banished.
Gulp. That meant they could never, ever come back. And since they were leaving this perfect place,
this place where everything was just right, they learned about a whole bunch of new things.
Things they've never known about before, like sadness
and crying
and death.
But you know what?
Even though Adam and Eve disobeyed and disappointed God, he still loved them. So he still had to send them away from the garden.
But, I'm so glad there's a but.
So it doesn't end this way? Even though he had to send Adam and Eve away, he had a plan to rescue them.
And God started that rescue plan right away. But that's another part of the story.